Story 1. The river spot wasn't something you found on a map. You had to know someone who knew someone, or just be the kind of person who wandered far enough off the road to stumble into it by accident. A dirt path cut through the trees, narrow and uneven, with tire tracks hardened into the ground from years of people driving out there when the weather allowed it. If you followed it long enough, the trees would thin just a little, and you'd hear it before you saw it. The steady rush of water moving over rocks, constant and low. That's how you knew you were close. The clearing itself opened up around a bend, a small stretch of exposed earth leading down to the riverbank. There was always evidence of other people being there. Burnt patches where fires had been lit, empty bottles half buried in the dirt, the occasional piece of rope tied to the thick branch of a tree that leaned out over the water. The rope swing was the main attraction. It hung over a deeper section of the river, where the current slowed just enough that you wouldn't get dragged immediately downstream. People would grab it, run, swing out as far as they could, and let go, dropping into the water with a splash and a shout. It was stupid, a little dangerous, but that was part of the appeal. We'd been there plenty of times. It was one of those places you went when you didn't want to be seen. No neighbors to complain, no cops driving by, no one to tell you to leave. Just trees, water, and whatever you brought with you. That night felt like any other. There were a handful of us, maybe 8 or 9, scattered around the clearing. Someone had a speaker going, music low enough that it didn't drown out the sound of the river, but loud enough to fill the quiet spaces between conversations. A fire burned near the edge of the clearing, throwing flickering light across faces and trees, casting long, shifting shadows that moved whenever the flames did. People laughed, talked, drank. Normal. Easy. It was late, but not so late that anyone was thinking about leaving. The kind of night that felt like it could stretch on for hours without changing. I remember standing near the edge of the clearing, looking out toward the darker part of the woods where the firelight didn't quite reach. There's always that line, you know? That invisible boundary where the light stops and the darkness begins. Everything on our side of it felt familiar, controlled. Everything beyond it didn't. I wasn't thinking about anything in particular when I noticed a movement. At first it was just a shift, a shape where there hadn't been one before, something breaking the stillness of the trees. Then he stepped into the light. He didn't come in fast or aggressive. He just appeared. Like he'd been standing just out of sight the entire time, waiting for the right moment to move forward. He was older than us. Not old, but older. Maybe late 30s, early 40s. Hard to tell exactly. His clothes were worn, not dirty exactly, but used. Like someone who spent more time outside than in. His hair was messy, his face rough, lined in a way that suggested he hadn't had an easy life. He didn't look surprised to see us. Didn't hesitate. He just walked closer, stopping a few feet beyond the outer edge of the group where the firelight hit him fully. No one said anything at first. The music kept playing. The river kept moving. And he just stood there, looking at us. One of the guys, Tyler, finally broke the silence. Can we help you? The man tilted his head slightly, like he was considering the question. Then he spoke. You gotta watch yourself down here. His voice was low, steady, with a slight slur that hinted at alcohol, but not enough to make him incoherent. A few people exchanged glances. What? Someone asked. He didn't answer that directly. Instead, he took a slow step closer, his eyes moving over the group one by one. There are some bad folks around here, he said. Something about the way he said it made the air shift. Not dramatically. Just enough that the easy feeling from before started to thin out. Tyler frowned. Okay, who are you? The man smiled. Not wide, not friendly, just enough to show he'd heard the question. I'm nobody, he said. That didn't help. If anything, it made things worse. There's something unsettling about someone who refuses to define themselves. It strips away context, leaves you with nothing to place them in. No category, no role. Just a person standing there saying things that don't quite make sense. All right, Tyler said, his tone sharper now. Well, nobody. We're good. You can head out. The man didn't move, didn't react, just kept looking at us. You gotta be careful, he repeated. People come out here thinking it's nothing, thinking it's just a good time. His gaze shifted toward the rope swing, barely visible in the darkness beyond the firelight. That thing, he said, nodding slightly in its direction. You don't know what's been done to it. A few people laughed, uneasy. Dude, what are you talking about? Someone said. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked back at us, his expression unchanged. Just watch yourselves, he said. There was a pause, a long one. Then Tyler stepped forward slightly, his patience gone. All right, man, seriously, you need to leave. For a second, it looked like the man might argue, or refuse, or say something else strange and unsettling. But instead, he shrugged, a small, almost indifferent movement. Then he turned and walked back into the woods. No rush, no hesitation, just disappeared into the darkness the same way he had come. Gone, just like that. For a moment, no one spoke. The music still played, but it felt out of place now. The fire crackled. The river moved. But something had shifted. Creepy, someone muttered. Yeah, another said. What the hell was that about? Tyler shook his head, trying to brush it off. Just some drunk guy. Probably lives out here or something. That seemed like the easiest explanation. And people wanted an easy explanation. So that's what we went with. Within a few minutes, the conversation started up again. The tension faded, replaced by forced normalcy. Someone turned the music up a little louder. Someone else cracked a joke. The night continued, but not quite the same. Every now and then, someone would glance toward the woods, just to check, just to make sure he wasn't still there, watching. A couple days later, everything changed. It wasn't at night. It wasn't during a party. It was in broad daylight. A different group had gone out to the river. Not all of us, just some people we knew. It was supposed to be the same thing. Hanging out, swimming, using the rope swing. Normal. Until it wasn't. She went off the swing like everyone else had done 100 times before. Grabbed the rope. Run. Swing out. Let go. Drop into the water. Except this time, something was wrong. She came up screaming. Not the kind of scream you let out when the water is cold or you hit wrong. A real scream. Sharp. Panicked. Pain. At first, no one understood what had happened. They thought maybe she hit a rock or twisted something. Then the water around her started turning red. They pulled her out. And that's when they saw it. Fishing hooks. Dozens of them. Embedded along the bottom of the swing's landing area, tied to lines hidden just below the surface. When she dropped in, they tore into her leg. Deep. Ripping chunks of flesh as she tried to pull away. The kind of thing you don't accidentally set up. The kind of thing someone has to plan. The kind of thing someone has to want. She was taken to the hospital. It was bad. Really bad. And suddenly that guy from the woods, the one who said to be careful, didn't feel so random anymore. We found out later who he was. Just some guy who lived nearby. Known in the area. A bit off. A bit drunk most of the time. Creepy, yeah. But harmless. At least that's what people said. And the things he had been warning about, they weren't him. They were real. Up the road, further into the woods, there was a family. Not the kind you saw in town. Not the kind that mixed with people. They kept to themselves. Lived off the grid. And there were stories. Whispers, mostly. About fights. About strange behavior. About things people didn't want to look into too closely. For a while, nothing else happened. Life moved on. The river spot wasn't used as much after that, but it didn't disappear completely. People still went, just more cautiously, more aware. The memory of that night faded, like things do when enough time passes. Until 5 years later. That's when it all came back. Not as a story, not as a warning, but as something real. They beat a kid nearly to death with a log, left him broken in the woods. And a girl, they took her at gunpoint, forced her into a vehicle, drove her around like she was nothing, like it was a game. She survived, barely. And when it came out who did it, it was them. The family from up the road. The ones no one talked about. The ones that man had tried to warn us about. Suddenly everything made sense. The way he stood there. The things he said. The way he looked at the rope swing. He knew. He had seen something. Or heard something. Or lived close enough to understand what was out there. And he had tried, in the only way he knew how, to tell us. We just didn't listen. Because he didn't look like someone worth listening to. Because it was easier to laugh it off. Because nothing bad had happened. Yet. I still think about that night sometimes. About how close we were to something we didn't understand. About how easily things could have been worse. And about that man, standing at the edge of the firelight, telling us to be careful, while we stood there thinking we were safe. Because the truth is, we weren't. We never were. We just didn't know it yet. Story 2. It was one of those heavy summer days where the air feels thick enough to hold on to. The kind that presses down on you, makes every step slower, every breath warmer than it should be. Even the trees in the park seemed still, like they had given up trying to move in the heat. I used to walk my dog there all the time. The park stretched long along the edge of the Thames River, winding trails cutting through patches of trees and open grass. On one side, it felt like nature, quiet, green, almost peaceful. On the other side, it backed up against houses. Not small ones either. Bigger homes with fenced-in yards, decks, sheds, all facing away from the street and toward the park like they wanted the privacy, but still needed the space. It was an odd mix, civilization and isolation pressed together. That day, it was quiet. Too quiet maybe, though I didn't think that at the time. My dog was slowing down more than usual, tongue hanging out, panting hard. The heat was getting to him. I could feel it too, the way the sun seemed to stick to your skin. "All right," I muttered, glancing toward the slope that led down to the river. "Let's get you some water." We'd done it before. There was a small path worn into the dirt where people and animals had gone down to the edge. Not official, not maintained, but easy enough to navigate if you knew where to step. We moved off the main trail, pushing through a small gap in the brush and starting down the incline. The ground was dry near the top, but closer to the water it softened, damp and uneven underfoot. At the bottom the air changed slightly, cooler, just a little, with the smell of water and mud and something organic that always lingered near the riverbanks. My dog didn't hesitate. He went straight to the edge, lowering his head and drinking greedily. I stood a few feet back, letting him do his thing, looking around without really focusing on anything. That's when I noticed how close we were to one of the houses. A tall privacy fence ran along the edge of the yard, wooden boards packed tight with no gaps between them. It loomed just a short distance from where we stood, separating the backyard from the riverbank like a wall. It felt close, closer than I usually like to be near someone's property. I remember thinking we'd just stay a minute and head back up. That's when I heard it. A sharp, rhythmic banging. Metal against something solid. It echoed strangely in the still air, louder than it should have been for something happening on the other side of a fence. Hammering. That was my first thought. Someone building something. A shed, maybe. Or fixing something up. It wasn't unusual. People did work in their yards all the time. I didn't think much of it. My dog kept drinking. The sound continued. Bang, bang, bang. Steady, forceful. Then, it stopped. Just like that. No fade. No slowdown. Just silence. And in that silence, a voice. "Shut up. Nobody knows you're here." The words cut through the air so cleanly it felt like everything around me froze. For a second, I didn't even process what I had heard. My brain tried to make it something else. A joke, a TV, someone talking on the phone. But there was something about the tone, sharp, angry, controlled. It didn't fit any of those things. Before I could even fully react, the hammering started again. Bang, bang, bang. Louder now. Faster. Like it was trying to cover something. That's when the fear hit. Not gradually. All at once. A cold, sinking feeling that dropped straight into my stomach and spread outward. My dog lifted his head, ears twitching slightly, sensing the shift in me more than the sound itself. "Come on," I said quickly, my voice lower than usual. He didn't need much encouragement. I tugged gently on his leash and turned toward the slope. The climb up felt steeper than it had on the way down. My footing slipped once on the damp ground, my hand catching against the dirt to steady myself. I didn't look back. I didn't want to. The hammering continued behind me, relentless, as if it was following. We reached the top of the bank, pushing back through the brush and onto the main trail. The moment my feet hit the flat ground, I didn't stop. I kept walking, faster than normal, my dog keeping pace beside me. I could feel my heart beating harder now, my ears picking up every sound around me, every rustle of leaves, every distant noise amplified. The trail curved slightly, bringing me parallel to the row of houses. And then, I was right beside it. That house. The one with the fence. The one where the voice had come from. The hammering had stopped again. The silence felt worse this time. He came out of the gate. It opened with a soft creak, the latch clicking as it swung inward. And he stepped out onto the path that led from the backyard to the front of the house. For a moment, he didn't see me. He was focused on what he was doing. Pushing a wheelbarrow. Old, rusty. The metal chipped and worn, the wheel making a faint grinding noise as it rolled. Then he looked up and saw me. Everything stopped. He froze mid-step, one hand still gripping the handle of the wheelbarrow. His eyes locked onto mine. He was wearing fatigues. Not clean, not pressed, not official looking. Just worn, faded. Like they had been used for years. His face was hard to read. Not because it was hidden, but because there was so little expression there. Just stillness, awareness, recognition. I didn't stop walking, but I slowed, just slightly, because I couldn't help it. Because something about the way he was looking at me made it impossible not to notice. He set the wheelbarrow down. Slowly, deliberately. The metal scraped softly against the ground. And then, he just stood there, watching, not saying anything, not moving, just staring. I followed his line of sight briefly, my eyes flicking past him toward the front of the house. That's when I saw them. 2 vans, parked side by side in the driveway. Plain, boxy. The kind of vans you don't remember after you've seen them. The kind that blend in. The kind people joke about. Kidnapping vans. At the time, it felt like a cliche. But standing there with him watching me, with that house behind him, it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like something else entirely. I looked back at him. He hadn't moved. Hadn't blinked. Hadn't broken eye contact. The world around us felt distant, muted. Like everything had narrowed down to just that moment. Just that look. Just that silent exchange. My grip tightened slightly on the leash. "Come on," I muttered to my dog, more to myself than anything else. And I kept walking, step by step. Not running, not turning around, just moving forward. His gaze followed me. I could feel it, like something physical pressing against my back. Every instinct in my body was screaming to get away. Faster. Now. But I forced myself to stay steady, to not give him anything, to not show fear. The path stretched ahead, longer than it had ever felt before. Each step measured, each second dragging. And still, I could feel him watching. It wasn't until I reached the bend in the trail, where the trees thickened just enough to block the view of the house, that I finally broke into a faster pace. Almost a run. My heart pounding now, adrenaline flooding through me. I didn't look back. I didn't want to know if he was still there. Or worse, if he wasn't. I didn't slow down until I was out of the park entirely. Until the houses gave way to streets. Until there were people again. Cars, noise, normal life. Even then, the feeling didn't go away. It stayed with me all the way home. A weight in my chest, a question in my mind. What did I hear? What was happening behind that fence? Who was he talking to? Or about? Shut up. Nobody knows you're here. The words replayed over and over. I called the police as soon as I got inside. My hands were still shaking slightly as I explained what had happened. The dispatcher asked questions, calm, methodical, trying to piece together something from what I could tell them. The location, the description, the house, the man, the vans. I answered everything I could, but there were gaps, things I didn't know, things I couldn't explain. They said they'd check it out. That was it. No immediate urgency in their voice. No confirmation of anything. Just procedure. I hung up and waited for something. A call back. News. Anything. Nothing came. Days passed. Then weeks. Life moved on. But the memory didn't. It stayed sharp. Clear. Unsettling. Because there was no ending. No explanation. No confirmation of what I had heard, or imagined, or almost witnessed. Just that moment, that voice, that man, standing there in the heat, staring at me like he was deciding something. And the feeling that if I had stayed just a little longer, or reacted just a little differently, I might have found out exactly what was happening behind that fence. And that is something I'm not sure I would have walked away from. Story 3. Out where we live, night came differently. It didn't creep in slowly under streetlights or fade behind the hum of traffic. It just arrived. One moment there was the last trace of dust sitting low over the fields, and the next it was swallowed whole by darkness so complete it felt like the world beyond your porch simply stopped existing. Our house sat alone, surrounded by open land and a thin line of trees in the distance. No close neighbors, no passing cars, unless someone was deliberately coming down our road. The kind of place where you noticed every sound because there were so few of them to begin with. That's why the knock stood out. It was around 9 o'clock at night. Not late by most standards, but out there it might as well have been midnight. People didn't just show up unannounced, especially not after dark. If someone came by, you usually knew ahead of time. There were no accidents, no casual drop-ins. So when the knock came, it didn't feel normal. It wasn't hesitant either. It was firm, deliberate. 3 sharp hits against the door. I remember looking up immediately, my body reacting before my mind caught up. My mom was in the other room, and I called out to her without thinking. "Someone's at the door." She came out, already frowning slightly. She had heard it too. "Who would be here?" she muttered, more to herself than to me. Neither of us had an answer. She moved toward the door slowly, not scared exactly, but cautious. That's just how you are when you live somewhere like that. You don't assume danger, but you don't ignore the possibility either. The porch light flicked on, casting a dull yellow glow over the front yard. She opened the door. A man stood there. At first glance, he didn't look threatening. That's the part that always sticks with me. He looked normal. Mid-30s maybe. Average height, clean enough. Dressed like someone trying to look presentable but not formal. The kind of person you wouldn't think twice about if you saw them during the day in a store or walking down the street. But this wasn't a store, and it wasn't daytime. "Evening, ma'am," he said, his voice smooth, practiced. My mom didn't step outside. She stayed just inside the doorway, one hand still on the frame. "Can I help you?" she asked. He smiled. "I'm just in the area introducing a new business," he said. "We specialize in American-made household products. I was wondering if you had a moment." There was something rehearsed about it. Not robotic, but too clean. Like he had said those exact words 100 times before. My mom didn't relax. "We're not interested," she said, polite but firm. Most people would leave at that point. He didn't. "That's all right," he said quickly, holding up a hand slightly. "No obligation. I just wanted to give you a free sample, something to try." He reached back toward the driveway. That's when I noticed the van. It had been there the whole time, parked just far enough from the porch that it blended into the darkness beyond the light. A minivan. Plain. Nothing distinctive about it. He opened the side door. The interior light flickered on, and that's when everything changed. There were people inside. More than one. Shapes at first, then clearer. 5 men. Sitting, watching, not talking, not moving. Just there. The light caught their faces in fragments. Eyes. Shadows. Expressions that didn't quite read from that distance, but didn't feel right. My mom saw them too. I could tell by the way her posture shifted. Subtly. Her shoulders tensed. Her voice changed when she spoke again. "Take your sample and leave," she said. He either didn't notice the change or he ignored it. Instead, he reached into the van and pulled something out. A container. White. Plastic. He walked back up the steps and handed it to her. "Just a little something," he said. "No strings attached." She took it. I think out of instinct. Or maybe just to end the interaction faster. Up close, I could see it clearly now. A Clorox container. Or at least something that looked like one. Clean. Too clean. No label peeling. No wear. It didn't feel like a sample. It felt like a prop. "Thanks," she said, though there was no warmth in it. He smiled again. Then he said something that made my stomach tighten. "I've got something else you might like," he said, turning slightly back toward the van. "A vacuum cleaner, high quality. Let me grab it." And he started walking back. My mom didn't follow. She stood there holding the container, watching him. And I watched her. Because something in her expression had changed completely. Not confusion, not annoyance. Something sharper. Awareness. She turned her head slightly toward me without taking her eyes off him. "Go get your phone," she said quietly. We didn't have a landline. If anything happened, that phone was the only way to call for help. I didn't ask questions. I just moved. Fast. Down the hallway. Into my room. Except, it wasn't where it should have been. I checked the desk. The bed. The floor. Nothing. My heart started pounding harder. The urgency rising fast now. Where the hell was it? I checked again. And again. Nothing. A sound from the front of the house made me freeze. The van door. Closing. Voices. Low. Too low to make out words. I stopped searching and grabbed the next thing I could think of. My knife. It wasn't big. It wasn't anything special. But it was something. I held it tight, my hand slightly shaking, and moved back toward the front of the house. I didn't go all the way to the door. I stopped just around the corner, where I could hear but not be seen. My mom was still there, standing in the doorway. The man was closer now. Too close. "I just need a minute," he was saying. "Won't take long." "No," she said, louder this time. There was no politeness left in her voice. "Get off my property." There was a pause, a shift in the air. And then she threw the container. Hard. It hit the ground outside, rolling slightly across the porch. "I said leave," she snapped. "Now, or I'm calling the cops." Silence. Heavy. Thick. The kind that feels like something is about to happen. I tightened my grip on the knife, my breath shallow now, my ears straining for any movement. The man didn't respond immediately. And in that moment, I realized something. He hadn't acted alone. He had come up to the door alone. But he hadn't been alone. Not for a second. The van was still there. The others were still inside, waiting, watching. For what? I didn't know. I didn't want to know. Footsteps. Retreating. The man stepped back off the porch. No argument. No anger. Just compliance. But it didn't feel like defeat. It felt like a decision. He turned, walked back to the van. The door slid open. Shadows shifted inside. He climbed in. And then the engine roared to life. Too loud. Too sudden. The tires spun against the gravel as they peeled out of the driveway, the sound echoing into the night as the van disappeared down the road. Gone. Just like that. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. The silence that followed felt unreal, like the house was holding its breath. I stepped out from the corner slowly, the knife still in my hand. My mom was still standing in the doorway, staring out into the darkness where the van had been. "Mom," I said quietly. She didn't answer right away. Then she turned to me, and I saw it. Fear. Real fear. Not panic. Not hysteria. But something deeper. Something that said she understood exactly how bad that could have been. "Lock the door," she said. I did. Every lock. Every window. We didn't sleep much that night. Every sound outside felt louder. Every shadow felt closer. And the questions, they didn't stop. What did they want? Why our house? What was in that container? What would have happened if she had stepped outside? If she had let him go back to the van and bring whatever he claimed he had? If I had found my phone faster or slower? We never saw them again. No van, no man, nothing. No explanation, no closure. Just that night, that knock. And the understanding that out there, in the middle of nowhere, where you think you're safest, you're also the most alone. And sometimes, that's exactly what someone is counting on.